tonight.
The Pentagon could send thousands more troops to the Middle East as Iran ramps up aggression in the region. And
Jobs, jobs, jobs. The U.S. economy adds tens of thousands more than economists' expectations. And
no choice but to impeach.
The latest on the impeachment front, the Speaker sticking to her guns.
After the latest string of shootings, how to stop the next one. Plus,
I hated black people, I hated Jews, I hated liberals, and on and on.
Confronting hate, an ex-member of the Ku Klux Klan shares his conversion story. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Terror in the Homeland. Investigators pieced together potential clues in today's Florida naval base shooting. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us. I'm Jenna Browder. Well, for the second time in just 3 days, a shooting at a military base has left multiple people dead.
And this time, it's being investigated as an act of terrorism. CBN National Security Correspondent Eric Phillips joins us now for the latest in the sting of shootings. Eric?
Well, John and Jenna, for the third time, or I should say the second time in 3 days, there's been a shooting at a U.S. Naval Air Station. Now, there was utter mayhem early this morning after the shooter opened fire in a classroom building. Authorities say the gunman was a member of the Saudi Air Force who was attending the aviation school at the base. After he opened fire, killing 3 people, a sheriff's deputy killed him. Investigators say the attacker, identified as Second Lieutenant Muhammad Saeed al-Shamrani, used a handgun during the spree, even though unauthorized weapons are not allowed on the base. Besides the 3 victims who died, 8 others were injured. The base employs 23,000 military, personnel, and civilian employees. The local sheriff described the crime scene there as something out of a movie. The Pensacola base has long hosted international students for flight training, and Congressman Matt Gaetz questions whether a lapse in federal vetting of foreign trainees opened the door for the attack. President Trump said the Saudi king, Salman, has spoken out against the shooting and offered his condolences.
It's a horrible thing that took place, and we're getting to the bottom of it. All of the investigators are there now, and they're studying it very closely, and terrible thing.
The shooting in Pensacola coming a day after the deadly shooting at the naval base in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Authorities say an active duty sailor by the name of Gabriel Romero attacked 3 civilian contractors at the base's shipyard because he was upset with his commanders. He apparently had been disciplined recently, and he had apparently undergone counseling as well. 2 of his victims died. A 36-year-old man is still in a Honolulu hospital. The gunman shot and killed himself, and he was reportedly assigned to the USS Columbia, which is undergoing repairs at Pearl Harbor's dry dock. That shooting happened just a few days before the 78th anniversary of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Authorities have not drawn a connection between these 2 tragedies, but there is a question as to whether one inspired the other or if the Pensacola shooting had been planned for some time. John and Jenna.
All right, thank you, Eric. Well, joining us now from Indiana is Mike McCarty, a violence prevention expert and an advisor to the Department of Homeland Security. Mike, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Mike, what is your reaction to these 2 back-to-back shootings at U.S. naval bases?
Shock and sadness, like everybody else. I will say, as a former detective, the first thing I would do is it's a little premature to begin to speculate. A lot of information will start coming out over the next week or 2. Exactly whether or not this was targeted violence or some other form of motivated violence.
Yeah, Mike, in the Pensacola shooting, the gunman was a Saudi airman training there. Do we need tighter rules on who's allowed to train at our military installations?
That's a great question. Again, speaking from what little bit we know today, I want to be very cautious to speculate. Sometimes very early in these investigations, some of the things that come out are not necessarily the facts that we find 2 or 3 or 4 days or a week into these investigations. So I think it's important in these 2 incidents to really kind of let the investigation unveil really kind of what was the motivation behind both of these particular shootings.
Shootings in the civilian world are more commonplace. What does it say when they happen on our military bases, especially when personal weapons are not allowed on base?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is that that the violence knows no boundaries as we look at here in the United States. And, one of the things I would say, when we're being cautious to speculate about what happened in these two incidents at the naval bases this week, I can tell you there are some things we do know. We know the FBI came out with a study in 2017 that said active shooter events are not spontaneous, they're not emotion driven, and they're not impulsive crimes. And then just last month, the U.S. Secret Service came out with a guide on school shootings in particular. And the underlying message in this guide from November 2019 is school shootings are preventable crimes. So I think there's two real lessons that come out of these most recent studies. That a lot of times we see these events and our first reaction is it's some kind of emotion, impulsive reaction to something, and it happened very quickly. And what we tend to find is they kind of investigate and roll out. We start to see that they are absolutely not typically crimes of impulsivity, that there's a lot of thought.
Mike, we're out of time, so we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Mike. Meanwhile, more U.S. troops could be heading to the Middle East. The Pentagon could send as many as 5,000 to 7,000 troops to discourage more aggression by Iran. Military officials said they could send, again, as many as 5,000 to 7,000 more troops, but still no official decision. The discussion comes as the death toll rises from recent protests by Iranian security forces.
It appears the regime could have murdered over 1,000 Iranian citizens since the protests began. We cannot be certain because the regime blocks information. Among those murdered are at least a dozen children, including 13 and 14-year-olds.
And Special Envoy Brian Hook says the U.S. has received more than 32,000 responses from inside Iran after Secretary of State Mike Pompeo asked for video and other evidence of government repression.
Well, tonight, Wall Street is soaring after a blockbuster jobs report. Those numbers exceeding economists' expectations by tens of thousands. And the stock market and bond yields are responding with a surge. America added 266,000 new jobs in November, better than the 187,000 expected. This as the unemployment rate edged down from 3.6% to 3.5%, the lowest jobless rate since 1969. Additionally, average hourly earnings surged 3.1% from last year. Economists are crediting the end of a month-long strike at General Motors as part of the employment boost. The across-the-board growth in jobs, is the best since January of this year.
And certainly good news. And speaking of jobs, one Democratic lawmaker is sharing his passion for spreading high-paying tech jobs to rural America. Congressman Ro Khanna's district includes the wealthy technology moguls of Silicon Valley. In an interview with CBN News, the progressive capitalist said the government should enforce some tech regulations while ensuring America stays competitive.
We need to make sure that every American around this country has access to those new technology jobs. I mean, we're competing with 1.2 billion people in China. We're not going to win if we write off communities or we don't have a person to waste. So I think on American leadership in the technology era, there should be bipartisanship, and we can fight about other things.
Meanwhile, the president is touting that, quote, great jobs report, tweeting jobs, jobs, jobs.
Yeah. CBN News White House correspondent Ben Kennedy has the latest from the president. Ben?
Yeah, Jenna, John, you said it. Sticking with the economy, President Trump used words like historic when talking about the jobs report. In fact, he said this is a great economic period for our country during his 2 p.m. roundtable discussion with small businesses. It is there he touted the unemployment numbers and that his administration has created 7 million jobs since he took office.
We're by far the largest economy in the world, and that was going to change. For many years, they were saying that was going to change. We were going to go to number 2. During this presidency. That was years ago, and I guess that the wrong president got elected from the standpoint
Not only at that roundtable discussion, but also on social media and Twitter. President Trump did not mention the impeachment today, and Democrats really decided to ramp that up moving forward with articles of impeachment, as you heard House Speaker Nancy Pelosi yesterday making that announcement. And also, we're told that Democrats plan to stay right here in D.C. over the weekend to exactly work out the details. What will those articles of impeachment look like? The White House here behind me is also working hard, getting together witnesses and documents in the event the House does vote to impeach him. It looks like House Democrats do have the numbers to do that. It could possibly happen before Christmas. If that is the case, the impeachment will then head to the Senate as possible as early as January. That is just 11 months before the 2020 election. And again, President Trump on social media yesterday said he feels very confident that he will be faring very well in the Senate because, again, you have to remember, John and Jenna, that Republicans do have control.
All right, Ben Kennedy at the White House. Well, as Ben mentioned, Democrats are steamrolling ahead with their push to remove President Trump from office.
But as Jennifer Wishon reports, at least one Democrat has a warning for the party. He says they're making a big mistake.
For just the fourth time in history, the House is moving to draw up articles of impeachment against a president. Speaker Nancy Pelosi making the announcement in a televised speech.
Sadly, but with confidence and humility.
Saying the president leaves us no choice, arguing democracy is at stake. And with a clear majority of Democrats in the House, it's expected to pass.
Are you worried, sir, about the stain that impeachment might have on your legacy?
It's a big fat hoax.
The president tweeted, "If you're going to impeach me, do it now, fast, so we can have a fair trial in the Senate. We will have Schiff, the Bidens, Pelosi, and many more testify."
It's a bad day for the country. I think this whole thing is a joke.
Senator Graham, who chairs the Senate Judiciary Committee, also tweeted, "Salem witches got better deals than this." Pelosi said earlier this year impeachment had to be bipartisan, but all Republicans are united against it.
We'll probably see that it's only bipartisan in being opposed. That is to say, I think we'll see some Democrats vote no.
Already, Democratic Congressman Jeff Van Drew says he plans to vote against all articles of impeachment. Van Drew represents a district in New Jersey that voted for the president in 2016. Meanwhile, in her weekly news conference, a typically poised Pelosi got riled when journalist James Rosen asked if she hates the president. Pointing her finger, Pelosi cited her Catholic faith.
I don't hate anyone. I was raised in a way that is a heart full of love, and always prayed for the president. And I still pray for the president. I pray for the president all the time. So don't mess with me when it comes to words like that.
In a Senate impeachment trial, Republicans will likely call House Intelligence Chairman Adam Schiff as a witness. Hunter Biden's ties to Ukraine will also be under the microscope. On the campaign trail in Iowa, Joe Biden engaged in a heated exchange with a voter who suggested he helped his son get a sweetheart gig on the board of a Ukrainian company in exchange for access to President Obama. Biden called him a liar.
No one has ever said that. No one has proved that.
On Monday, the House Judiciary Committee will hear a report outlining findings against the president. The full House expects to vote on impeachment possibly right before Christmas, setting up a January trial in the Senate. And the big question, will this public show end up hurting moderate Democrats in the long run? Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Washington.
We will see. All right, thank you, Jennifer. We'll stick around after the break. Our political panel with The Hill's Julia Manchester.
Come home to the sounds of Southern Gospel from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern gospel favorites like the Gaithers, the Crab Family, and bluegrass sounds like Mountain Faith. So make yourself at home with the all-new CBN Southern Gospel. Now available at cbnradio.com.
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torres-Cedillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
Prophecy thousands of years old. We were called to be a light to the world.
Being fulfilled today. Discover how. Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life. Just call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he have, which color he is. This is what I'm doing.
See how the people of Israel are fulfilling prophecy.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
By sharing their knowledge.
In Africa, in Asia, in South America, in East Europe.
And their love.
This is how we work. This is us.
Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
Welcome back. An abuse of power or an abuse of law? One Republican lawmaker tells CBN News the impeachment hearings show how politicians widely abuse and loosely interpret the law. North Carolina Congressman Dan Bishop also says that his constituents back at home have had enough.
Democrats have wrapped the entire federal government into a pretzel with a single-headed idea to destroy the president. They despise the president. They despise Donald Trump, and that's what it's all about. And I think most people who are out there trying to live lives in which lots of things are tough and the government can make them better, they have no clue what Washington is doing.
And with that, we want to bring in Julia Manchester, reporter with The Hill. Julia, good to have you. Happy Friday.
Thank you for having me. Happy Friday.
So what do you make of the congressman's comments? Is he right? Are Americans tiring of this impeachment process?
You know, it's really hard to tell. The country seems really 50-50 at this point. I'm sure if you were to go from district to district, you would very much get a different point of view. You know, I think there are a lot of progressive Democrats, establishment Democrats that very much want the president to be impeached. The Democratic messaging right now is that this needs to be done before the election because they believe President Trump violating the Constitution very much, justifies that. However, Republicans view this as Democrats unhappy with the results of the 2016 election, and therefore they are trying to oust Trump via impeachment. However, there's a number of polls that show Americans are 50-50 split on this. 50% of Americans, according to a recent CNN poll, said that they were in favor of President Trump being impeached and removed from office. However, there's another 50% that say it's a different story. So I would say potentially in Dan Bishop's district in North Carolina, where it is a bit more conservative, I could absolutely see that being true. However, if you were to go to a state like California, New York, it's a very different story there.
Julia, before the break, we talked about the new jobs numbers, way better than expected. How much do you think that this will help President Trump heading into 2020?
Very much helps President Trump heading into 2020, especially if he continues to tout economic growth under his administration. Where he runs into trouble is when he talks more about impeachment and the witch hunter, the corrupt Democrats, more than the economy. I think he should definitely take a cue, I would say, from the Clinton administration when they were going through impeachment and when there was a growing economy, where Bill Clinton very much focused on his policies and economic policies and only talked about impeachment when he absolutely had to.
Now stay focused. On the campaign trail, there's that video of Joe Biden that's getting a lot of attention. He's calling a voter a liar with an expletive thrown in there that we can't say on TV. When this voter, he asked him about his relationship with Ukraine. This issue of Ukraine does not appear to be going away for Biden.
It's not going away for Biden, and it's not going away for the other senators such as Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders on the campaign trail, who very well will have to go back to Washington for a Senate trial if impeachment goes into the Senate. However, I think in a strange way, that moment may actually help Biden in the long term. He was very snappy in his response. He came back and very much went after that voter and said, obviously it wasn't too eloquent, but he said, I'm going to set the record straight. Here it is. And I think Democrats want him to be more responsive and want him to be on top of that. It also makes him sound like a father who genuinely cares about his son and doesn't want his son being put in any public harm and that kind of thing. So, the issue of Ukraine will definitely dog Biden and these other senators. But in that moment, I don't think it necessarily hurt Biden.
Do you think we'll see him testify in the Senate trial?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, we'll really have to wait and see. I think the chances are slim, but you never know.
Yeah, maybe him and his son.
Yes.
We'll see. All right, well, coming up, Julia, thank you. Coming up, overcoming hatred. An ex-Klan member shares his remarkable conversion story.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5, Wednesday night at 9:30.
Tikkun Olam.
This is our nature as a country.
To make the world a better place.
Literally, we felt the earth shaking.
The Christian Broadcasting Network presents To Life, how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
This film needs to be seen by everyone.
I was in tears.
Now you can own the inspiring documentary To Life on DVD.
There is blood on our hands if we know and we walk away.
I'm so grateful that this film was made.
To Life can be yours for a gift of $10 or more. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com.
We know that every minute counts to save life.
It'll bless Israel, but it'll also bless all the friends of Israel.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are making the world a better place. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com to get your copy today.
Political division, activist moments, and anger, both face-to-face and on social media. Today's society often seems filled with hate.
And in some cases, we've seen how that hate has led to violence. One Christian leader told me why it's a condition the church must confront.
I heard lots of sermons. I went to Sunday school regularly. I even made a profession of faith when I was 13 years old.
Listening to Tom Terrence, it's hard to imagine the soft-spoken preacher once served time in prison and survived 4 gunshot wounds in an FBI shootout before landing a 30-year sentence for planting a bomb at the home of a civil rights leader in 1968.
I hated black people, I hated Jews, I hated liberals, and on and on.
That hatred eventually drew him to the Ku Klux Klan.
My school had been selected for desegregation, and I became very angry about it.
In prison, Tom began a search for truth and deeper meaning that ultimately led him to the Bible. He became a Christian and acknowledged his sordid past.
I certainly deserved to die. I had deserved to go to hell for my sins. But in His great mercy, God spared my life.
Tom's faith grew with the help of prominent Christians like Billy Graham and Chuck Colson, founder of Prison Fellowship. He abandoned his racist ideology, and after an unexpected early prison release, Tom saw an amazing turnaround, eventually co-pastoring a multi-ethnic church in Washington, D.C., and leading a global ministry devoted to making Christian disciples.
It's not impossible for people who hold some basic Christian beliefs to embrace this kind of extremist narrative that I did.
Now, some 50 years later, Tom sees another cultural collision facing America. He reveals similarities between then and now in his new book, Consumed by Hate, Redeemed by Love.
I saw all of this as a kind of war, fighting for God and country.
A viewpoint still evident today.
Jews will not replace us! Jews will not replace us!
He points to April's deadly shooting at a California synagogue as an example of white nationalism growing on the internet and how it's worked its way onto college campuses and even inside some churches.
A young man raised in a Presbyterian church, Orthodox Presbyterian church, I should say, fell into this type of thinking and put them together, and then went and shot up a synagogue.
He calls on churches to confront this evil and believes the key to change is at the core of true Christian values.
Just teach the Bible. Teach what Jesus taught about loving God with all your heart, and soul and mind and strength, and loving your neighbor. All the different races and ethnicities and political perspectives. We're called to love one another.
A message and a calling, he says, is more urgent now than ever. And you can find Tom's book, Consumed by Hate, Redeemed by Love, wherever books are sold.
Coming up, the First Lady honors a holiday tradition for the needy.
It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
From Washington, D.C., uncompromising stories, interviews, and analysis from veteran journalists David Brody.
Escalating fight.
Jenna Browder.
Chose his words carefully.
Ben Kennedy.
Plan to join him.
And Amber Strong.
For impeachment grows a little bit louder.
Bringing you the political news that matters.
We get out and tell the story of the progress that we're making in this country.
Watch Faith Nation, weeknights at 6 on the CBN News Channel.
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
As the nations rage, you can stand with Israel.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
Call 1-800-700-7000 and get to life.
This is our nature as a country.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he have, which color he is, this is what I'm doing.
Support Israel in their time of need. Get to Life, now available on DVD. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
And I wish that other people throughout the world could see this side of Israel.
Well, finally tonight, First Lady Melania Trump paid a visit earlier today to the Children's National Hospital.
That's right. Following the tradition of the First Ladies before her, Melania took a look to bring a little cheer to families in need. Mrs. Trump joined Santa and Mrs. Claus to read Oliver the Ornament, meet Spell. Meeting with patients, families, and medical staff, the First Lady toured the surgical care and short stay units. Visiting the hospital is a tradition set by First Lady Bess Truman, who over 60 years ago spent time with families unable to spend the holidays at home.
That is a fantastic tradition, especially at this time of the year.
It's beautiful. I'm sure they loved having her there.
Yeah, by all means. Well, that does it for tonight's Faith Nation.
Have a great weekend.